The first season begins with Lucas Hood, a former thief who has just been released from prison after spending 15 long years behind bars. Eager to reconnect with his past, Lucas quickly steals a car to meet his old friend, Job, who is a skilled hacker. After a bit of a mess, Job finally gives Lucas the address of a woman he has been searching for. As Lucas drives, he finds himself being chased by a dangerous Ukrainian gangster named Oleg. The chase becomes intense as they speed through the streets, but Lucas cleverly escapes by switching to a motorcycle. After a thrilling ride, Lucas arrives in a small town called Banshee. At the courthouse, a judge is finishing a case involving a local Mafia leader named Proctor. The prosecutor, Gordon, and a young mayor named Dan Kendall look unhappy with how the case turned out. The woman Lucas is looking for turns out to be Carrie, who is married to Gordon. They have a daughter named Dava and a younger son named Max. When Carrie unexpectedly sees Lucas in her backyard, she is shocked, and he quickly disappears again. Lucas then visits a bar owned by Sugar, a former boxer who knows what it's like to be in trouble, having spent 8 years in prison himself. Excited to be free, Lucas shares his story, and Sugar helps him create a new identity. Meanwhile, a new sheriff named Lucas Hood is coming to town. Two thugs try to bully Sugar for money, but Sheriff Hood stands his ground, even with guns pointed at him. The situation escalates into a standoff, leading to a shootout where the sheriff and his men are killed. After the chaos, Sugar tells Lucas to leave the town and assures him that he will take care of the bodies. In the evening, Lucas quietly returned to Carrie's house with help from Job. He was surprised when Carrie told him their daughter was now 13 years old. They had a long and complicated history, and Carrie, who Lucas used to know as Anna, had disappeared from his life for 15 years. Lucas asked Carrie if they could split the $10 million worth of stolen diamonds, but she told him that they had already been given to someone named Rabbit. Feeling frustrated, Lucas went back to the bar to help Sugar bury the 3 bodies they had found. While there, the sheriff's phone rang, and Lucas answered it. It was the mayor on the other line. Since they had never met before, Lucas pretended to be the sheriff. This was an easy way for him to assume the sheriff's identity in Banshee. To make everything look official, he asked Job for help to create a new identity and hack into the police database to make himself appear as the real Lucas Hood. Sugar not only offered Lucas a place to stay above the bar, but he also warned him to hide when Kai came looking for his 2 missing henchmen. Sugar didn't tell Lucas that the men were dead. To avoid further trouble, Sugar gave Lucas some money to leave town, but Lucas was determined to meet the young mayor and stick to his plan. Job quickly had his team prepare a car when they spotted 2 people they thought were the police approaching their hideout. Job tried to fight off the gang members when he realized they were looking for Lucas, but he was unable to stop them. The 2 men were Oleg and another henchman from the Ukrainian Mafia boss, Rabbit, who were on a mission to find Lucas. Job managed to escape through the back door and set off an explosion in his hideout to cover his tracks. Meanwhile, the mayor took Lucas to the sheriff's office, where he met the deputies, Deputy Emmett, Brock, and a female deputy named Kelly. While on patrol, they ran into trouble at a furniture factory. The Moody family was causing chaos because furniture prices were dropping and the factory was going bankrupt. The Moodys surrounded Lucas, but he stood his ground and wasn't afraid. A fight broke out, and then Kai, a man who introduced himself as a meat businessman, arrived to stop Cole from attacking Lucas. Kai turned out to be Cole's father, but their relationship seemed tense and strained. During the confusion, Lucas briefly took Dava's wallet, possibly because he wondered if she could be his daughter from his past with Carrie. Kai's right-hand man, Burton, reported that their missing henchmen were last seen at Sugar's bar. When Cole showed up, he apologized for not realizing that the man they had attacked was actually Kai's father. However, Kai was not forgiving. He beat Cole severely for his mistake. Meanwhile, Kelly helped Lucas put on his new sheriff uniform on the day he was officially starting his job in Banshee. This marked the beginning of Lucas's return to his old life as a professional thief. At a party later, Carrie was surprised to see Lucas as the new sheriff. In private, Lucas showed her a safe that she could open, but she refused to help him and walked away. Suddenly, Cole attacked Lucas from behind and even fired a shot at Kai. Lucas quickly regained his balance and shot Cole dead, defending himself. Meanwhile, Rabbit, the Ukrainian gangster boss ordered Oleg, who had only suffered a minor injury from the explosion, to hunt down Lucas and Carrie. Both Lucas and Carrie were haunted by their past as they tried to escape from the police. However, their biggest fear was Rabbit, since no one had ever dared to steal from him before. At the same time, Kai's henchman named Hansen was in charge of drug production, which was the real business of the Mafia. Meanwhile, Dava received an invitation from her boyfriend Reed to visit a house deep in the woods. Unbeknownst to her, this house was being used for drug manufacturing under Hansen's supervision. While she was there, Dava saw Hansen teaching a lesson to a man named Arno. They were both instructed to spread invitations for a party at the house. Later, Kai visited the sheriff's office and offered Lucas a partnership, hoping Lucas would be their puppet in town. Despite his criminal past and being a stand-in sheriff, Lucas turned down their offer. The next day, Carrie entered an empty building and was immediately attacked, but it turned out to be part of her training. Sugar advised Lucas to leave his bar to avoid trouble with the Moody family, who were holding a morning event there. A woman named Rebecca watched Lucas closely, and Kat Moody, the widow of the late Cole, slapped him for killing her husband. Two drunk Moody brothers even pointed guns at Lucas, but he stood his ground, refusing to back down. Sugar intervened with a shotgun, forcing the brothers to step back. Instead of arresting them, Lucas decided to let them go. Afterward, Rebecca gave Lucas a sharp look, and they ended up having a brief romantic encounter. The scene flashes back to Lucas's past when he and Carrie were trying to escape with stolen diamonds. In a moment of sacrifice, Lucas decided to turn himself in to protect Carrie's safety. Meanwhile, a man named Elijah informed the sheriff's office about a party taking place in a warehouse deep in the woods. He mentioned that his daughter, Rebecca, would be there. Before heading to the party, Lucas and his 3 deputies armed themselves, ready for action. The party was packed with young people enjoying drugs that Hansen had supplied. Dava and her friend Reed, who was a DJ, were also at the event, unaware of the trouble brewing. When Lucas and his team arrived at the party, the deputies planned to surround the building, but Lucas opted to sneak in and confront the mastermind directly. He first disabled the security systems to gain entry. Inside, Lucas spotted Hansen, but just then, panic broke out as Reed and several others overdosed on drugs. The police quickly moved in to shut down the party. Lucas tried to catch Hansen, but he was blocked by Hansen's guards. Just in time, Emmett arrived and took down Hansen, but it was too late. Reed had sadly succumbed to the drugs. Fueled by anger, Lucas lashed out after one of Hansen's captured guards insulted Dava. Ignoring the consequences, Lucas acted violently, even though Brock, his fellow deputy, warned him against such brutal actions. In retaliation for the chaos, Kai took drastic measures. He cut off Hansen's fingers and fed them to his dog. It was revealed that Kai had been making a massive $250,000 a week from drug sales in Philadelphia and Washington, D.C. Hansen had become a liability because he was selling drugs in their town. To make things worse, Reed was the son of a senator, which complicated Kai's position. Without hesitation, Kai fed Hansen to his dog as punishment. Meanwhile, Lucas escorted Dava back to her home, where Carrie watched from the upstairs window. Determined to take control, Carrie decided to eliminate Rabbit's 2 guards. When Rabbit returned to his room, he was confronted by Carrie, who had him at gunpoint. She still possessed the diamonds and offered them to Rabbit, worth tens of millions of dollars, in exchange for him never bothering her again. At first, Rabbit couldn't believe that Lucas had found him in just 1 week after being on the run for 15 years. He refused the diamonds, stating that what he really wanted was Lucas. He proposed a deal to Carrie. If she handed over Lucas, he would stop chasing him. Unbeknownst to Rabbit, he had been injected with a sedative, and it was revealed that Rabbit was actually Carrie's father. At the same time, Kai opened a casino in Banshee, teaming up with a Native American businessman named Benjamin and his son Alex. They invited world boxing champion Sanchez to the grand opening. After a funeral, Gordon invited Lucas to dinner at his house. During the meal, Lucas seized the opportunity to discuss personal matters with Carrie. He expressed his disappointment and feelings of betrayal, sharing how painful it had been to spend 15 years in prison. Back at the bar, Lucas felt troubled by his past. He found some comfort in Rebecca, who happened to be Kai's niece. The next day, a boxing match took place between Sanchez and a Marine to promote Kai's casino. Meanwhile, Lucas tried to get information from Kai about some drug pills he had discovered, but the Mafia boss claimed he knew nothing about them. After arrogantly defeating his opponent in the ring, Sanchez turned his attention to Lucas and challenged him. Lucas, however, ignored Sanchez's taunts and didn't respond. During the match, Sanchez began to harass a waitress. In response, Carrie pointed a gun at the waitress and threw her diamonds to Lucas, hoping he would leave her life behind. Feeling humiliated, Lucas rejected the diamonds and chose to stay in town, determined to confront his problems. The waitress who had been attacked by Sanchez ended up in the hospital with severe injuries. Lucas and Kelly decided to go to the casino to arrest Sanchez, but they were initially blocked by Kai and Sanchez's manager Dern. Not wanting to arrest Sanchez without a fight, Lucas challenged him to a duel. In their first encounter, Lucas took several hits from Sanchez. Despite his injuries, Lucas stood back up and continued to fight until he finally defeated Sanchez. After the match, Sugar brought Lucas back to the bar to help him recover. Kai was furious with the new sheriff, who was proving to be tougher than previous sheriffs. Because of the fight, Kai ordered Burton to collect the money that Sanchez owed, but when Dern refused to pay, Burton eliminated him without hesitation. Later, Lucas found himself in trouble after stealing a painting and getting trapped in a corridor of a museum. He tried to contact Job for help, but Job was busy dealing with a rude restaurant patron who insulted him. At the same time, Carrie reached out to Lucas. Even though she said she didn't have feelings for him anymore, she offered him support to help keep him calm. Lucas managed to open a door and incapacitate 2 police officers, but he had to flee when more officers closed in on him. A chase ensued, and Lucas found himself trapped in the middle of the road. Fortunately, Carrie arrived just in time to rescue him. Back in Banshee, Sugar picked up Lucas, and Carrie explained that she wanted to save him from being discovered by Rabbit, ensuring his safety. In the morning, Senator Robert waited for Lucas in his office. He was upset because his son had died from a drug overdose, and he pressured Lucas to catch the person responsible. To investigate, Lucas called in Dava for questioning. She told him that she had seen Arno meeting with Hansen before the party. Later, Carrie expressed her anger when she found out that Dava had been called in without her knowledge. Lucas and Deputy Emmett then went to Arno's house, which was located in a neighborhood filled with unemployed troublemakers. They managed to catch Arno just as he tried to escape. When they captured him, Arno revealed that he had discovered Hansen's severed hand at Kai's butcher shop. He even recorded a video of Kai feeding Hansen to his dogs. Lucas took the phone as evidence to show Prosecutor Gordon. With this proof, they could charge Kai with murder. Lucas and Emmett rushed to Kai's house to arrest him. The Mafia boss, who was practicing martial arts, didn't resist when Lucas took him into custody. On their way back to the police station, they suddenly crashed into the Moody family, who were seeking revenge for Cole's death. Kai himself was tied to a tree, and Emmett's fate was unclear. Just as they were about to execute them, Lucas fought back fiercely, cutting off Marcus's ear. Fortunately, Emmett arrived just in time to save Lucas. Choosing not to escalate the conflict further, Lucas forgave the Moodys and let them go. Back at the office, other deputies and Kai's lawyer were shocked to see their client badly beaten. Lucas felt tempted to attack the lawyer due to his taunts, but Sugar stepped in to stop him. Sugar expressed his desire to be involved in whatever Lucas had planned, and Lucas welcomed his help. Carrie, impressed by Lucas's decision to forgive her family, came to see him. She initially wanted to talk to him, but when she saw Kat was there, she changed her mind and left. The mayor, Kendall, visited the police station to see Kai, who was being held in a cell. Kendall promised to destroy the Mafia, just as he had done to his father. Suddenly, Kai choked Kendall, making it hard for him to breathe. The judge agreed to the defense attorney's request to release Kai into city custody until the trial. Meanwhile, Brock was assigned to keep an eye on Arno at a motel, since he was a key witness in Kai's murder case. Suddenly, the wall of the motel exploded with explosives, and Arno was kidnapped by the attackers. A motorcycle gang, marked with a skull ring symbol, arrived in Banshee. At the same time, a motorcyclist followed a box truck entering a cattle farm. This motorcyclist turned out to be Job, who quickly informed Lucas. Sugar was on standby with them. From their location, they observed suspicious activities involving Kai and his henchmen, including Benjamin and his son Alex. They became curious about what the Mafia was up to. Gordon introduced Lucas to FBI agent Dean Xavier. It seemed the FBI and DEA were aware of Kai's drug operations, but had never managed to catch him. The issue was that they had lost their witnesses, and the evidence they had was not strong enough to convince a judge. While taking a relaxing walk, Carrie was suddenly harassed by a motorcycle gang. Sugar, who was nearby, rushed to help her. He took down 2 gang members with a single punch, but then they struck him from behind. Kelly, who had sensed trouble, quickly sprang into action. One gang member continued to threaten Carrie with his gun, but Kelly bravely shot him dead. Lucas arrived at the scene and checked on Carrie, while Sugar was taken to the hospital with a head injury. Furious about the attack, Lucas wanted revenge against the motorcycle gang. Despite losing one of their members, the gang showed no signs of backing down and planned to continue terrorizing Banshee. Meanwhile, Kelly struggled to process her feelings about killing someone for the first time as sheriff. To channel her anger, she practiced shooting at a target. The leader of the motorcycle gang retaliated by stabbing a tire on Kelly's car, which escalated their harassment of her after she shot their member. When Lucas learned about the situation, he joined Kelly and Emmett to search for the gang's hideout. During a local carnival, the gang caused chaos, running over people and creating panic. Lucas and Brock fought hard to catch them, and Rebecca, who was running her food stand, even threw a knife at one of the gang members in defense. Following the chaos, the residents of Banshee demanded that the mayor and the sheriff take responsibility and find a solution to the growing violence. Kai saw this as an opportunity to win favor with the citizens by offering his henchmen to protect the town. Sheriff Lucas promised the townspeople that they would be safe, and the festival continued as planned. Lucas felt a sense of relief when Rebecca's parents handed him the knife their daughter had thrown. Meanwhile, Lucas asked Kelly to stay at his house until she could regain control of her emotions. Though she was hesitant, she reluctantly agreed. That night, the motorcycle gang unexpectedly attacked her home. Kelly tried to chase them away, but they ended up setting her house on fire. Lucas quickly responded after hearing reports of the incident. Kelly felt devastated, knowing that her home held many precious memories. Lucas met with Kai, who had captured one of the gang members. He demanded to know where the others were hiding. Without showing mercy, Lucas took swift action, incapacitating all the gang members with his own hands. In the morning, Job was assigned to transport Lucas and Kelly to Cleveland, a city that had filed charges against the gang for their wild behavior. Kelly was surprised when she received a ring belonging to one of the gang members. Gordon, her husband, began to feel suspicious when he saw his wife sitting with Lucas. He sensed that Carrie was hiding something from him. Lucas's past came back to haunt him. When he was in prison, Rabbit had come to force Lucas to reveal Carrie's location, but Lucas insisted he didn't know. Using his power, Rabbit ordered several inmates, including their leader, the albino, to beat Lucas. Each day in that prison was filled with pain and torture for him. A former inmate named Wicks arrived in Banshee and was shocked to see Lucas in a sheriff's uniform. Meanwhile, Benjamin and Kai were planning to build a luxurious hotel in town, but they faced strong resistance from a pastor named Arthur, who refused to sell his land. When Kai met with Arthur, the pastor refused to sell his house, which had a sacred well, even though the Mafia offered him double the price. When Lucas got to his office, he found Wicks locked up in a cell. It turned out that when Lucas received treatment at the prison clinic, only Wicks had been willing to help him. Wicks warned Lucas that he had to give in to Albino's threats if he wanted to stay alive. That's why Wicks knew Lucas so well. If Lucas spoke out, his true identity would be revealed. Coincidentally, Carrie ended up at the same restaurant and noticed Lucas with Wicks. Seeing how close they were, Carrie's friends started to suspect there was something special between Carrie and Lucas. Since Wicks was jobless, Lucas arranged for him to stay in a hotel. While in jail, Wicks told Lucas about a guy named Billy, who was Albino's favorite. With his arm still in a cast, Lucas boldly decided to meet with Albino to make a deal, but Albino remained loyal to Rabbit. Lucas had the chance to become Albino's favorite, just like Billy, to satisfy his desires. Unexpectedly, Lucas used a sharp object hidden in his cast to stab Billy in the neck. As a result, Lucas was thrown into solitary confinement for the next 90 days. Finally, Lucas gave Wicks $2,500 to stay quiet and leave town. Arthur was shocked to see explicit photos of his wife with Kai from before they were married. The pastor felt he had no choice but to sell his land because Kai threatened to release those photos and videos. Meanwhile, Max had to go to the hospital because his asthma worsened. During his 90 days in solitary confinement, Lucas spent each day working on his physical strength. Instead of using the money Lucas gave him wisely, Wicks wasted it all in one night at the gambling table. Because of his reckless behavior, he ended up back in a cell. The casino owner, Alex, was furious about it. To protect his secret, Lucas had no choice but to help Wicks get released again. Wicks then asked Lucas for a new deal. He was ready to work and earn money. On the day Lucas got out of solitary confinement, Wicks handed him a weapon. However, Albino's henchman quickly took it away from him. Lucas was forced to kneel in front of them, facing the threat of having his throat cut with a straight razor. At that moment, Lucas pretended to cooperate, but quickly turned the razor to slash Albino's throat. He didn't stop there. He fought back until he snapped Albino's neck with a barbell. After that, no inmate dared to mess with him. Meanwhile, Carrie contacted her father to tell him she was ready to hand Lucas over to him. In another part of town, Kai's brother visited the slaughterhouse for the first time in decades, as they had different beliefs. Elijah asked Kai to bring back Rebecca, hoping his daughter would listen to him. Lucas, Job, and Sugar had a plan to sneak into Kai's secret factory. Suddenly, Carrie called Lucas and asked him to meet her at a fence. When they were about to start a stolen car, Carrie asked Lucas to handle it. To his surprise, she injected him with a tranquilizer. It turned out that Carrie had set a trap to deliver Lucas to Rabbit. Meanwhile, while Emmett was shopping at a convenience store, two robbers burst in. Without any hesitation, they shot the cashier dead. Emmett prepared himself for the worst, praying that he would be shot too, but the robbers decided to run away instead. Emmett quickly chased after them, and his colleagues arrived after receiving a radio call for help. The robbers fled into the sports building at Banshee High School. During the chase, Emmett was shot in the hand. The robbers entered the building, taking the mayor's wife, who was teaching students, as a hostage. To everyone's shock, Deva and several other students were also taken hostage. Meanwhile, Carrie left a diamond with Lucas, who was handcuffed in a hotel room, to be handed over to Rabbit. 3 deputy sheriffs from Banshee surrounded the school building, waiting for backup. They struggled to reach Lucas and were too scared to go inside. A student secretly recorded the robbers' faces and live-streamed it on social media. News of the hostage situation spread quickly, and TV news vans began arriving at the scene. Unaware that her daughter was in danger, Carrie ignored her husband's phone calls. Janie, the mayor's wife, had to undress while calling the police to request a getaway car. Rabbit and his henchmen were on their way, eager to eliminate Lucas. In the hotel room, Lucas struggled to free himself from the handcuffs, but couldn't get loose. His emotions soared when he saw Deva among the hostages held by the robbers. When Carrie finally answered her husband's call, she was shocked to learn that Deva was in danger. Just as Lucas managed to free one of his hands, the hotel room door burst open. Job rushed in, finding Lucas just before Rabbit could arrive. Rabbit was furious that he had once again failed to capture Lucas. Inside the school, the mayor's wife narrowly avoided being harmed by the robbers. Brock informed her that his car was ready for their escape, but some students resisted. Deva and her friend attempted to break free from the robbers just as Lucas arrived at the scene. Carrie was astonished to see how he managed to escape. Without hesitation, Lucas bravely entered the building to ensure Deva and the other hostages were safe. He urged the robbers to surrender, and soon the SWAT team arrived. Eventually, Lucas managed to take down one of the robbers, but one remained, holding Deva hostage. When Deva ducked down to avoid danger, Lucas took a shot and hit the captor, ending the threat. With the situation finally under control, Carrie felt relieved that her daughter was safe. Ironically, the person who saved her life was the same person she had tried to hand over to her father. Meanwhile, Rabbit watched the news broadcast and was shocked to see that Lucas, the man he had been chasing, was now the sheriff of Banshee. In a bar, Kai approached Lucas to thank him for his brave actions. He felt relieved because the missing key witness had set him free once again. At home, Carrie waited anxiously for Lucas. When he arrived, she apologized and expressed her regret for her actions. She even wished Lucas would shoot her for the foolish things she had done. But his deep love for her stopped him from doing anything harmful. Meanwhile, Oleg had been sent by Rabbit to Banshee to continue his hunt for Lucas. One morning, Rebecca was kicked out of her family for breaking their religious rules. Lucas urged Carrie not to leave again, but she felt she couldn't because her husband and kids needed her. At the same time, Gordon, unable to bear the secrets his wife was hiding, searched their room for clues about Carrie's true past. Eventually, Carrie confessed that Deva was Lucas's daughter. She revealed that when Gordon had just finished his military training, he accepted Carrie for who she was and welcomed Deva as his own child after Carrie told him her biological father had passed away. As Carrie was about to leave, she was startled to see Oleg, who forced her into the trunk of a car. But Lucas arrived just in time to stop him. After being kicked out, Rebecca stayed at her uncle's house. Kai faced a similar fate when his father expelled him for going astray. Rebecca was excited about her uncle's fancy house and the swimming pool. Even though they captured Oleg, Carrie and Lucas felt more worried because Rabbit was getting closer. Carrie realized she couldn't escape like before because she now had a family. Suddenly, Rebecca came to Lucas's house. Not wanting to add to their problems, Lucas decided to take Rebecca away while Carrie kept an eye on Oleg. However, Carrie discovered that Oleg actually had feelings for her, but chose to remain loyal to Rabbit. To everyone's surprise, Oleg managed to free himself from his restraints. A fierce fight broke out between Carrie and Oleg as they exchanged blows, each trying to overpower the other. Lucas was unaware of this conflict because he was focused on Rebecca. After a long absence, Kai returned to his family. The Mafia boss expressed his disappointment at how poorly Rebecca had been treated. Despite both being badly beaten, Carrie and Oleg remained determined. Lucas wanted to go home, but an FBI agent stopped him to ask about his investigation into Kai. Then, another woman named Nola appeared. She was Benjamin's daughter and Alex's sister, but did not share her father's beliefs. In fact, Nola hoped her father would pass away soon. Meanwhile, Gordon searched the room thoroughly and found an old necklace that belonged to his wife, which contained a photo inside. The battle between Oleg and Carrie continued, even as they both grew weaker. In a struggle, Carrie was stabbed in the stomach and was about to be taken away, but she fought back and stabbed Oleg in the back. Their shared past was revealed, where they had made a promise to protect each other. Meanwhile, Kai warned Rebecca to stay away from the sheriff. In a badly injured state, Carrie felt the presence of her father. To her surprise, Oleg was still alive, and in a moment of desperation, Carrie stabbed him in the neck, ending his life. When Lucas came home, he was shocked to see Carrie covered in blood. They rushed her to the hospital for immediate medical treatment for her serious injuries. Shortly after they arrived, Gordon showed up at the hospital, filled with anger. He blamed Lucas for the pain his wife had endured, believing he was somehow involved. Meanwhile, Job and Sugar had already buried Oleg's body, leaving Lucas with no choice but to confront Rabbit. The leader of the Ukrainian gang was gathering his men to hunt down Lucas and take revenge for Oleg's death. Once Carrie woke up, she didn't focus on her severe injuries. Instead, she urged Lucas to go home, pick up their 2 children, and leave Banshee for good. Gordon returned home, and Carrie quickly rushed to pick up Max from school. As Lucas prepared his weapons, Carrie arrived at the school, only to be surprised to find her father waiting behind the door. Understanding the seriousness of the situation, she got back on her feet to search for Max, but she discovered that Rabbit had already taken her youngest son. Carrie finally made it to the police station, where Lucas told her to stay calm. However, when Gordon arrived, he asked Lucas to leave. Carrie confessed to Gordon that her father, whom she had said was dead, had kidnapped their child. Meanwhile, FBI agents arrived to take control of the case, which meant that the sheriff and all his deputies now answered to them. The scene shifted to a hotel construction project led by Alex and Nola. There was a dispute with Kai, who claimed to be involved in the mega project as part of his deal with Benjamin. To assert his authority, Kai blew a whistle, and all the project workers immediately stopped what they were doing. Although Kai had the power to hurt Alex, he felt he had to keep his promise to Benjamin. Max was taken to a warehouse that served as Rabbit's base, where he needed his nebulizer because of his asthma. Meanwhile, Lucas approached Kai for help, but the Banshee Mafia boss was already angry about the sheriff's actions concerning Rebecca. A fight broke out between them, and they both ended up battered. They were equally stubborn and only stopped when they ran out of energy. Eventually, Kai agreed to help Lucas in his fight against the ruthless gang pursuing him, but with one condition: Lucas could no longer have any relationship with Rebecca. At the same time, Gordon saw Carrie taking a hidden weapon from the backyard. Although she couldn't explain everything yet, Carrie needed to ensure Max's safety. When they entered the house, they found Rabbit already there. Rabbit had discovered that Dava was Lucas's child because she was exactly 15 years old. When Gordon arrived, he intended to confront Rabbit, but Carrie stopped him, knowing that Max's life was at stake. Dava was shocked to learn that her biological father was not Gordon. Rabbit had come to take Max's nebulizer, but he refused to release Max even when Carrie offered to trade her own life for her son's. Determined, Carrie promised that she would take Rabbit's life with her own hands. Meanwhile, Alex was using Kai's former henchman, Jeffrey, who owed money to his casino, to help carry out a plan against Kai. In another part of town, Lucas was stunned when Rabbit suddenly appeared on the top floor of his office building. The Ukrainian gangster seemed to want just one last look at Lucas's face, which made Lucas realize he was in serious danger. Before he knew it, Lucas found himself under attack by Rabbit's team of assassins, with bullets flying everywhere. He quickly took cover behind a car. Just then, Kai and his henchmen showed up to rescue him, but now Lucas owed a favor to the Banshee Mafia. At the same time, Rabbit was taken aback when he received a report that all his henchmen had been wiped out. That morning, Lucas's own henchmen and FBI agents arrived at his office. Because Xavier threatened to investigate him for the attack, Lucas quickly handed his sheriff's badge over to Brock. Meanwhile, Job and Sugar were trying to find Rabbit's hiding place, which was proving to be difficult. Suddenly, Carrie arrived to help the team find her son. Determined to get Max back, Lucas decided to turn himself in. Just then, Kai was attacked by Jeffrey, but Burton appeared just in time to save his boss. Before he died, Jeffrey confessed that he had been sent by Alex. Seeing this, Rebecca rushed to help her uncle. Meanwhile, Nola fired a shot at a foreign car that entered her yard, only to discover that the culprits had sent Jeffrey's severed head as a warning to Alex. Lucas then surrendered himself to Rabbit, hoping to get Max back home safely. Gordon shared this good news with Carrie, but she realized that Lucas had sacrificed himself for their son's safety. Meanwhile, Job and Sugar tracked Lucas's phone and set out to rescue him. Despite her husband's objections, Carrie insisted on joining them in the mission. While in prison, Lucas attacked a female rehabilitation officer who had pretended to promise him parole, but was actually working with Rabbit to keep an eye on him. Because he had dared to steal Rabbit's diamonds, Lucas now found himself in serious trouble, facing the wrath of Rabbit's henchmen, who brutally beat him. Meanwhile, Carrie and her team were stopped by Brock. At the same time, Lucas's head was wrapped in plastic, making it difficult for him to breathe. Rabbit held a deep grudge against Lucas because he believed Lucas had taken away his only child. Eventually, Brock, Kelly, and Emmett decided to help Carrie rescue Lucas. When they arrived at the location, they quickly took out two of Rabbit's henchmen guarding the gate. The battle began, and one by one, members of the Ukrainian gang fell to Carrie and her team. A fierce firefight broke out, and Brock was shot. The team managed to regain control when their enemies failed to fire a rocket launcher at them. Rabbit found himself helpless as his henchmen were killed one after another. True to her word, Carrie was ready to confront her own father. As the fight continued, Rabbit suffered 2 bullets in his body, and finally, Lucas managed to survive. Medical personnel rushed to the scene, but strangely, Xavier couldn't find Rabbit's body. There were bloodstains leading to a nearby tunnel. Carrie had a brief reunion with her children, but it was short-lived because Gordon decided to take them away. In another part of the town, animal hunters discovered a buried body in the woods. Meanwhile, the mayor of Banshee casually sat on top of the under-construction hotel. Unexpectedly, Kai had planted explosives there. Rebecca was instructed to press a button on her phone, and an explosion demolished the building. Lucas was recovering well, thanks to Kelly's diligent care. However, he was worried because they still hadn't found Rabbit's body. The big question remained, was Rabbit still alive? After receiving a report, the FBI uncovered a human skeleton, and by the hole in the hand, they realized it belonged to the original Sheriff Lucas. Lucas's son, Jason Hood, was shocked when he saw a news report mentioning his father. And that's how the story leads into Season 2. In the early part of Season 2, Lucas is seen trying to heal from the pain Rabbit caused him. Carrie comes to visit, worried about him. She is now living alone because Gordon won't let her be near her children. Her true identity has been revealed, and she must face a trial. Even though both Lucas and Carrie are in danger, Lucas chooses to stay in Banshee. Meanwhile, Rebecca decides to live with her uncle, Kai, instead of returning to her parents' home. At the same time, Sugar and Job hatch a plan to steal the original Sheriff Lucas's body from the morgue. They do this to hide their own identities and keep themselves safe. Soon after, Agent Jim Racine arrives in Banshee to lead an investigation. Agent Xavier informs him that they found 3 bodies, but one has gone missing. Following this, Jim holds a closed federal meeting with Banshee town officials and carefully examines Lucas. Due to serious events in town, they will investigate everything thoroughly. The first person to be questioned is Lucas. He insists that he doesn't know Rabbit or the person responsible for killing 3 members of Rabbit's gang during an attack on the office. Jim, the special agent, is sharp and curious about the connection between Carrie and Lucas, but Carrie denies having a special relationship with the sheriff. Meanwhile, 3 deputies share their stories about the rescue mission to save Lucas. During a fierce shootout, Carrie shows great bravery. She justifies her choice to shoot her own father because he was a dangerous gangster who had kidnapped her child. Jim believes that Rabbit is still alive, and sure enough, Rabbit reappears. Jim decides to reinstate Lucas as sheriff since he was seen as an innocent victim during the attack, not a part of the shootout. In another development, Brock receives 18 months of probation and a warning letter for leading the attack that night without federal approval. Emmett and Kelly also get 12 months of probation. Lucas expresses his feelings to Xavier, who disagrees with his choices. Jim stresses that his main goal is to find Rabbit, whether he is dead or alive, while Xavier is determined to track down Kai. Meanwhile, Carrie faces threats from the secret agent due to illegal weapons possession and her involvement in the attack. Jim says he will drop the charges against her if she reveals where her father is. In a private meeting, Gordon asks Brock to watch Lucas closely for any suspicious behavior. Lucas and his team move into a new office while Carrie stays in a hotel. One day, Lucas and his team daringly rob an armored truck for money. As they execute their plan, the guards start shooting while Lucas hangs between 2 cars. Despite the chaos, they manage to grab a few bags of money. After escaping, they drive into a forest, but then a motorcyclist appears and begins firing at them, causing their car to crash into a ravine. Just when it seems they are trapped, Sugar arrives in a car and crashes into the motorcyclist's bike, saving the team. They discover that the attacker is Nola, who is Alex's sister. Because of the attack, the team only manages to secure $100,000. They're left puzzled about who the attacker was and how their mission was exposed. Carrie argues that she needed to be part of this robbery because she recently lost her job. Although they have stolen diamonds, Lucas refuses Job's idea to leave this dangerous town. He arrives at the scene to pretend he is investigating the robbery of the casino's money truck owned by Alex. One of the members of the Indian Tribal Council, named George, seems unhappy with how Alex is running things, as Alex has taken over his father's position. After her home was burned down by motorcycle gang members, Kelly is now living in a trailer. It seems she has feelings for Lucas, but she is too shy to tell him. The people of Banshee gather for the funeral of the mayor, who died in a hotel explosion that was still under construction in town. Gordon is asked to give the eulogy. While relaxing in Sugar's barn, Nola approaches Lucas, but the sheriff does not realize she was the one who attacked his team. Jim meets with a pastor to ask about Rabbit's whereabouts, only to find out that this pastor is Rabbit's brother. Meanwhile, Brock learns from Kai that 2 of his men were found dead and left as skeletons. These were the last 2 he saw when Lucas first came to town. At the same time, Kelly is shocked when her ex-husband, Brees, suddenly appears, even though the court had ordered him to stay away from her. Brees claims he has changed and no longer drinks. He asks Kelly to lift the restraining order so he can find a job. Emmett quickly kicks Brees out, knowing the terrible things he did to Kelly. Lucas now also understands Kelly's troubled past with her ex-husband. Carrie receives a 30-day jail sentence for possessing an illegal weapon. Both Gordon and Lucas, who care for Carrie, argue and blame each other for her punishment. Meanwhile, haunted by her past, Kelly takes out her frustrations by practicing her shooting. Before she became a police officer, she suffered from abuse at the hands of her husband. At the same time, Job divided the stolen money, which totaled $156,000. Kai was shocked when the milk truck he was driving suddenly exploded right in front of him. Alex confessed that he was behind the explosion because he had taken the $156,000 from his casino. Meanwhile, Kelly was getting frustrated because Brees, her ex-husband, showed up unexpectedly at her trailer, saying he was there to fix a leaky roof. Rebecca had plans to meet Lucas, but since the sheriff wasn't around, she was bothered by some drunken Marines. Nola quickly intervened to stop the soldiers from bothering her. Unfortunately, Rebecca was drugged and taken to Alex. They planned to use her to lure Kai. Kai came to Lucas's house looking for his nephew, but Alex had already kidnapped him to force Kai to return the $156,000 he stole from the casino. Kai demanded that Lucas return Rebecca as part of his debt repayment. With Job's help, Lucas decided to sneak into the casino through the back door. He quietly took down a security guard to get into the main room, but soon found himself facing several other guards. Lucas bravely confronted them all and eventually discovered Rebecca with Alex and Nola, who were both pointing guns at him. Despite the tense situation, Lucas successfully rescued Rebecca and brought her back to her uncle safely. The next day, Lucas gave Carrie some advice on how to survive her time in prison. He told her to stay quiet and not show her anger. Then, he took her to the women's prison to serve her 30-day sentence. As he walked through the prison, memories of his own dark past from 15 years ago flooded back. When Carrie entered the prison, she was met with mocking remarks and intimidation from other inmates, but she tried her best to stay silent and composed. Meanwhile, Kelly was deeply affected by Brees's unexpected appearance in her trailer. He had abused her in the past, leaving her with lasting trauma. Alma asked Lucas to check on Kelly, who should have already started her night shift. When Lucas arrived, he noticed that Kelly's hand was bandaged. Concerned, he asked about her ex-husband's whereabouts and decided to confront him. However, it was actually Kelly who wanted to face Brees herself and take control of the situation. At the same time, Carrie was provoked by another inmate. In a moment of anger, Carrie fought back and broke the disrespectful inmate's hand. Not long after, Kelly managed to overpower Brees. When Lucas arrived, he smiled, pleased to see that Kelly had taken care of the situation. Kelly, wanting to release her built-up anger, intentionally gave Lucas a false address to keep him busy. Later, Lucas went back to the prison to check on Carrie. He offered her moral support, encouraging her to stay strong. Unlike Carrie, who felt regret for never visiting Lucas when he was in prison, he tried to lift her spirits. On that day, an Amish spiritual group was celebrating a wedding. However, Rebecca's younger brother, Solomon, was missing. He was spending time with his girlfriend, Lana, from the Kinaho Indian tribe. That night, heavy rain fell, and when Solomon's parents couldn't find him at home, Elijah immediately set out to search for him. He found Lana lying lifeless, her head struck by an axe. The next morning, Lucas and his team arrived at the scene. Solomon was still missing, and Elijah was worried about his son. He feared that Solomon might end up like Lana. According to his friend, Lana and Solomon had been dating, which led to a dispute between their two groups, each blaming the other for the trouble. Lucas shouted to stop the fighting and asked about a tall man with long hair and many tattoos. Brock identified him as Chayton, the leader of the Kinaho tribe gang, who had a history of spending time in prison. News of Solomon's disappearance reached Kai and Rebecca while they were practicing their shooting. The men from their group began searching the fields and forests, but they couldn't find him. Even though he wasn't the original sheriff, Lucas felt a strong responsibility to solve this case. Rebecca approached Lucas, convinced that her brother was innocent and hoping he could bring him back safely. Meanwhile, Kelly learned that Lana's ex-boyfriend, Tommy, who was also Chayton's brother, had threatened Lana after finding out about her relationship with Solomon. Lucas and his team quickly went to Tommy's hideout. Their arrival was not welcomed by the gang, who shut the door on them. Lucas decided to sneak in through the back door, intending only to question Tommy. This became a major problem for Lucas because he had to confront Chayton, the leader of the gang. Feeling overwhelmed, Lucas found himself in a tough situation, and his team had to break in to help him. Even though Brock used a stun gun, the gang members proved difficult to subdue. Eventually, Lucas managed to take control, and both Chayton and Tommy were arrested and taken to the sheriff's office, locked in cells for assaulting law enforcement and resisting arrest. At the same time, Jason Hood stood in the front parking lot, watching Lucas. He introduced himself to Alma as Jason Smith and said he wanted to meet the sheriff. Lucas was shocked to realize that this young man was the son of Lucas Hood. He explained to Jason the truth about his father's death, making it clear that he wasn't the one who killed him. Jason looked surprised that Lucas was so calm, even though his true identity was at risk of being exposed. In contrast, Lucas was astonished that Jason didn't seem sad after just learning about his father's death. For a moment, Lucas pointed his gun at Jason, but ultimately decided to invite him to lunch instead. Meanwhile, Kai and Rebecca visited Solomon's parents' house to gather information about where he might be. Rebecca spoke with Paisha, who was close to Solomon, to get more details. Paisha told Rebecca to meet her at a small bridge in the forest. While this was happening, Kai confronted the Kinaho tribe, demanding answers about Lana's death. He easily dealt with two of them, and Burton helped drive them away. Even though his own family didn't appreciate him, Kai was determined to find Solomon. On the other hand, Jason admitted that he had become involved with a drug cartel, but managed to escape. However, they were still chasing him, even in Nevada. Lucas understood Jason's situation because he, too, had stolen something from a dangerous group, whether it was an item or a person, similar to his own past experiences. Jason asked Lucas for help in creating a fake identity to stay safe. In return, he promised to keep his father's real identity as Lucas Hood a secret. After Lucas left, Sugar placed a knife on the table as a warning for Jason to keep quiet and protect his father's secret, or else his father's grave would become a family grave. Not long after, Rebecca waited on the bridge when she was suddenly attacked by an unknown man. She tried to escape, but was briefly caught. Fortunately, Lucas and his team arrived just in time to help her. Lucas chased after the attacker, but someone hit him from behind. Dazed, Lucas managed to shoot the man in the leg, but the attacker still managed to escape. Kelly quickly took Lucas to rest inside her trailer. Meanwhile, Nola wept beside Lana's body, while the Indian gangsters chanted a spell in their prison cell. At Lana's funeral, Lucas and Nola finally had a chance to speak since they hadn't been formally introduced before. Nola told Lucas that Chayton, despite being a gangster, was not the one who killed Lana. On the other hand, Carrie tried to contact Gordon almost every day, but she never heard back from him. She longed to reunite her family, but it seemed increasingly unlikely. At the same time, Job was shocked to learn that the young man he was helping create a fake identity for was the son of Lucas Hood. Meanwhile, there was a heated argument between Kai and Alex at a restaurant. Kai's actions had harmed their people, and as the tribe leader, Alex was not happy with him. At the same time, Lucas and Brock were searching for a young man named Daniel, who had escaped from the Amish community and was now living in an empty warehouse. Daniel explained that he ran away because he was not allowed to read books. He talked about a strict teacher who was harsh and abusive, especially to students who brought books from outside. This teacher was also worried that Solomon might follow in Rebecca's footsteps. Rebecca heard a similar story from Paisha. Without wasting any time, Lucas decided to visit the teacher named Jonah. To get Jonah to confess, Lucas started a conversation about his students. He became suspicious when he noticed blood on Jonah's knees. Jonah had shot the man who chased Rebecca the day before. When Jonah realized that his identity was exposed, he attacked Lucas. Once again, the sheriff had to deal with an angry man. After subduing Jonah, Lucas forced him to reveal where Solomon was. However, Jonah remained silent until Kai used some clever tactics to make him talk. After some intense questioning, Kai finally learned the location where Solomon was being held captive. In the end, Lucas and Rebecca were able to find him. At that moment, Jonah attacked Lana with an axe, killing her. He then beat up Solomon and kidnapped him. Meanwhile, Jason and Rebecca met at the bar. At the same time, Emmett and Kelly were tasked with taking Chayton to the police headquarters. During the ride, Chayton began chanting a spell and suddenly went wild, causing their car to flip over. Kelly thought she might be facing her end with the gangster, but Chayton only wanted to free her from her handcuffs before escaping with his gang, who had come to pick him up. Emmett felt helpless on his own, so he released Chayton, realizing it was impossible to fight them all. When they arrived at headquarters, Lucas took Kelly home. Meanwhile, Kai visited Alex's office to show him the teeth he had knocked out of Lana's murderer. This was meant as a peace offering to end their feud. However, Nola expressed her disappointment with Alex, calling him weak. That night, she went to the prison cell and took revenge for her pain by burying an axe in the murderer's head, taking a life for a life. On the other hand, Carrie was shocked when her father, Rabbit, came to visit her in prison. He looked weak and frail as he admitted that he only wanted to see Carrie's face one last time because it reminded him of her mother. After serving her 30-day sentence, Carrie was finally free again. Unfortunately, her husband and children didn't come to pick her up as she had hoped. However, Lucas was there, waiting for her. On their way back to Banshee, they noticed a car following them. During a brief stop for a meal, Lucas grew suspicious of the car that continued to trail them. When he approached it, he discovered it was just a woman who had been out shopping. Continuing their journey, Lucas decided to take Carrie to see the house he had bought in a quiet and peaceful area. They spent time there, reminiscing about happier moments. The next morning, Lucas felt like someone was watching them from the woods. He went to investigate and found it was Agent Jim. Jim had ambitious plans to catch Rabbit, who had recently visited the prison. He explained that he had caught Rabbit years ago when he was a rookie, but couldn't keep him locked up because there wasn't enough evidence. A week later, Jim's secret informant and his family were murdered. Jim already knew that the real Lucas had died 15 years ago. He had witnessed Lucas's interrogation by Agent Bonner and found DNA evidence from Lucas's clothing in his grave. Suddenly, a sniper shot Jim in the head, and more attackers came to eliminate Lucas and Carrie. They fought back and managed to escape. It turned out that Carrie, who had a spider tattoo on her neck, a sign of her loyalty to Rabbit, was driving the attackers. In the end, Lucas killed one of the assailants, but sadly, their dream house was completely burned down. Meanwhile, 3 animal hunters tried to steal car mirrors from a hitman named Quentin. Unfortunately, Quentin caught them and quickly beat them up. At the same time, Alex needed support from Kai because some members of the tribal council were against his leadership. Kai asked Lucas for a list of those who opposed Alex before the council meeting next week. Lucas finally secured a new identity for Jason. Suddenly, Quentin showed up, looking for the money that Jason had stolen. Regardless of the reasons, Sugar and Lucas forced Quentin and his accomplices out, which led to a shootout. The 2 hitmen managed to escape. Now, Jason had to explain everything to Lucas. Lucas's henchmen came to the bar to gather information. Brock was suspicious of Lucas because many incidents in town seemed to point back to him. Jason admitted to stealing $62,000 and showed the money, which had now dwindled to $49,000. Meanwhile, Brock quietly entered Lucas's room and discovered an ID card and a photo of Gordon's family. In another part of town, Dava felt insulted when her friends talked about her mother's wrongdoings. Gordon became angry at the parents of Dava's friends for disrespecting her. The next day, Quentin casually showed up in front of Lucas's office, thinking that Lucas had a violent past. He proposed a deal to avoid killing each other. Lucas offered him $50,000 plus the $62,000 that Jason had stolen, making a total of $112,000, in exchange for stopping his pursuit of Jason and considering him dead. Unexpectedly, Quentin proved to be untrustworthy. He kidnapped Jason, intending to take him to his boss. Lucas suspected that Quentin was a dishonest liar, so he confronted him in the middle of the road. A fight broke out, and in the end, Quentin's head was severed by a passing container truck. Back at his hotel, Lucas gave Jason his father's watch as a keepsake. They planned to catch a northbound train the next morning using Jason's new identity. That night, Jason visited the bar for the last time, while Lucas relaxed in his trailer home with Kelly. Suddenly, Kai and Burton showed up, intending to kill Jason. Kai didn't want anyone else to harm his nephew. Burton quickly cleaned up the crime scene to erase any evidence of the murder, but Jason left behind the watch that Lucas had given him. Not long after, Job returned from New York with bad news. Rabbit had been deceiving him all along, and Lucas had spent 15 years in prison for stealing fake diamonds. The next morning, Lucas went to Jason's hotel room, but found it empty. Jason's money was still there, but the watch Lucas had given him lay forgotten on the floor. Lucas asked Sugar, who mentioned that Jason had gone out with Rebecca the night before. Without wasting time, Lucas headed to Kai's house to question Rebecca. When Lucas arrived, Rebecca seemed frightened, and her uncle Kai appeared to be hiding something. It looked like Kai might have killed Jason. Lucas thought about seeking revenge, but he knew he had to be careful when dealing with a clever mafia figure like Kai. Brock suggested they gather evidence against Kai first. Meanwhile, Kai, fearing for his daughter's safety, threatened some tribal council members who opposed Alex's leadership. At the same time, Deva found Max unconscious and called for an ambulance, as she couldn't reach her father. Lucas and his team decided to raid Kai's prostitution den, and they were shocked to discover Gordon, a government official, there. After hearing about the situation from Deva, Carrie also rushed to the hospital. Deva was upset with her father for being hard to reach. Kai, furious, punished his subordinates at the club for failing to prevent the police from raiding it. Max's condition worsened, and surgery became the only option, but Gordon admitted he didn't have enough money for it. A man claimed to know the driver who delivered drugs for Kai, named Matt. Lucas and his team quickly headed to Matt's workshop. When they arrived, Matt and his friends refused to answer Lucas's questions, and a fight broke out. Lucas chased Matt, who eventually revealed the location of Kai's drug factory. Later, Job decided to share a portion of the stolen money from the casino with Carrie. However, she asked Job for more help because she needed a large sum of money for her child's medical treatment, but she didn't want Lucas to be involved in this mission. Not long after, Lucas discovered the location of the drug factory. It had a security system that he was able to decode easily, thanks to his skills as a professional thief. Meanwhile, Alex called a meeting with the tribal council members. George pushed for a vote of no confidence in Alex's leadership as tribal chief. However, no one dared to raise their hands because some council members had already been threatened by Kai. At night, Lucas and his team launched their operation. They hijacked a truck carrying drugs and crashed it into Kai's factory. They stepped back to let Job destroy the factory, marking the start of Kai's downfall. On another night, Lucas had to let Carrie and Job go after they were caught stealing and planned to escape. He instructed his deputies to chase in a different direction. Although disappointed, Lucas understood their actions, especially when Carrie explained she needed money for her child's medical expenses. After the explosion at the factory, Kai found himself in serious trouble. His associates in Philadelphia demanded their supply. Additionally, there was a power outage at the slaughterhouse because a hacker breached their server, causing their meat stock to spoil. These attacks made Kai extremely angry at Lucas. When they met, Kai couldn't figure out what Sheriff Lucas really wanted. Meanwhile, Emmett was overjoyed because he and his wife were expecting a child. Lucas received a tip from Juliet, who said she had seen one of Kai's henchmen moving crates into a secret room in Kai's house. As Emmett and his wife were leaving, they were ambushed by Matt and his skinhead gang. Emmett's wife was beaten until she lost consciousness. At the hospital, Emmett was filled with emotions when his wife revealed that their attackers were from the skinhead group. Kelly and Brock tried to calm him down, assuring him that they would handle the situation. Lucas then sneaked into Kai's house and found a hidden room filled with weapons. He reported this discovery to the assistant district attorney, who then obtained a search warrant for Kai's house. Matt and his buddies were arrested and thrown in jail. Using the warrant, Lucas pretended to stumble upon Kai's secret room, which was loaded with illegal weapons, leading to Kai's immediate arrest. The weapons were kept as evidence in the sheriff's office. Meanwhile, Emmett's wife survived the attack, but they couldn't save their unborn child. However, Gordon was surprised when Carrie left money for Max, which softened his heart. After hearing Rebecca's words, Kai realized that Juliet had revealed the location of his secret room. He then asked Burton to keep an eye on her. Lucas met with Alex to suggest that they team up to take down Kai. Alex shared that his late father and Kai had worked together to take land from the residents of Banshee. With Kai now in jail, they would have to wait for his trial to determine his fate. That night, Emmett decided it was time to teach the skinhead group a harsh lesson for all the pain they had caused him and his wife. He felt he had been patient for too long. He began by beating Matt's friends with an iron rod and then gave Matt a brutal beating using brass knuckles. Meanwhile, Job had finally pinpointed what he believed was Rabbit's hideout, based on Agent Jim's previous investigation. Not long after, Lucas and his team were shocked to discover how brutal Emmett had been with the prisoners. Realizing the serious consequences Emmett would face, including losing his job and facing legal charges, Lucas tried to find a way to help him. In the end, Emmett chose to resign from the police force. On the other hand, Job decided to go after Rabbit by himself. He infiltrated a church where he thought Rabbit might be hiding. Unfortunately, Ulish, Rabbit's brother who pretended to be a pastor, discovered Job. A shootout broke out, and facing overwhelming odds, Job decided to escape. As he left the church, he was accidentally hit by a taxi. At the same time, Emmett, having made the decision to leave the police force, paid Lucas a final visit to say goodbye. Meanwhile, in the hospital, Matt was killed by Burton for revealing the location of Kai's drug factory. Sugar, who was Kai's childhood friend, visited him in jail to offer support. However, Kai began to suspect that Sugar might be working with Lucas, and he was ready to harm him too. To ensure her safety, Rebecca advised Juliet to escape, even though Juliet was an important witness in the case against Kai. Now, it was up to Alex to decide what to do next, as he had a list of people whose land had been taken by Kai for the new casino construction. Alex hoped that Rebecca would cooperate in bringing down her uncle, especially since he had feelings for her. On another front, Captain Julius Bonner went to the church to meet the priest while investigating the disappearance of Agent Jim, who had often visited the church in search of Rabbit. In reality, Bonner had previously dealt with Lucas, whose real name was Diamond. Rabbit was still hiding in the church. They were searching for Job in various hospitals, but Job had just regained consciousness and was planning to leave the New York hospital before they could find him. George accused Alex of conspiring with Kai, realizing he had been mistaken about Alex all along. Meanwhile, to help Gordon understand the suffering she had endured since childhood due to her father's cruelty, Carrie shared some of her painful experiences. On the other hand, Job urgently contacted Lucas for help, revealing that he had found Rabbit's hiding place. Lucas quickly rushed to rescue Job, even though Kelly still didn't fully understand the sheriff's secrets. As Lucas was leaving town, unsure when he would return, he entrusted his badge to Brock. Knowing he couldn't go alone, Lucas decided to bring Carrie with him because she wanted to confront Rabbit. This led to a brief conflict with Gordon, who initially objected to her leaving. At the hospital, two hitmen hired by Rabbit arrived disguised as priests. They searched each room methodically, trying to find Job. When they found Carrie and Lucas, a fierce gunfight broke out between them and the hitmen, who were trying to harm Job. Eventually, Carrie and Lucas succeeded in taking out the hitmen. With the hitmen dealt with, their next mission was to track down Rabbit, but they needed a lot of weapons for that task. Job knew someone who could help Lucas acquire the necessary weapons. As they planned, Rabbit's dark past came to light when a man was executed for allegedly stealing from him. At that time, Rabbit, Carrie, Lucas, and Oleg were professional thieves at the height of their careers. Rabbit had given them one last job before a holiday, to steal a $10 million diamond from Capital Diamond. Lucas was hesitant at first because they had tried and failed before, but Rabbit insisted he attempted again, despite the risks. Oleg had a crush on Carrie back then, but she chose Lucas. It was during this time that Lucas asked Carrie to escape from Rabbit with the stolen diamond. To make their plan work, they sought Job's help to create fake identities. Agent Jim was already tracking Rabbit, but a Ukrainian Mafia boss who had switched sides threatened Jim's safety. Lucas and Carrie infiltrated the headquarters of the Chinese gang to meet their contact. Although the gang members initially resisted, Lucas eventually met with Fat O. Because of a past favor, Fatto agreed to provide the weapons Lucas needed. While preparing, Lucas and Oleg received combat training in the ring. Oleg admitted that Lucas was better than him in combat. During a conversation with her father, Carrie sensed that Rabbit might already know about the escape plan she and Lucas were making. Unbeknownst to them, Oleg was secretly watching Lucas's moves. Meanwhile, Job provided new identities for Lucas and Carrie as they geared up with weapons to finally end the Rabbit situation that had lasted over 15 years. Job was eager to help, but Lucas told him it was too dangerous. Unbeknownst to Lucas and Carrie, Rabbit had set a trap for them by reporting a robbery at Capital Diamond to the police. The two managed to take down Rabbit's henchmen before entering the church. Inside, Yulish felt powerless as his men had been defeated, but he had already prepared a trap. Dozens of his henchmen surrounded Lucas and Carrie, leading to a fierce firefight. A storm of bullets filled the air, leaving Lucas and Carrie trapped. It seemed like they might have to accept their fate. Unlike 15 years ago, Lucas instructed Carrie to flee, willing to sacrifice himself for her safety. Just then, Job and Fatto arrived to help. They eliminated all the enemies, including Yulish, who had been targeting Carrie. Only Rabbit remained, now helpless in the grasp of Lucas and Carrie. Knowing her father was about to face his end, Carrie handed him a pistol with one bullet, urging him to make a fateful decision. This marked the end of Rabbit's reign as the Ukrainian gangster boss. They then made their way back to the town of Banshee. Lucas escorted Carrie to her home, and he returned to his concerned deputy, who had been worried about his safety. Meanwhile, Rebecca paid an unexpected visit to Alex, the Indian tribal chief, catching him off guard. To his surprise, she didn't come to kill him. At the same time, Emmett and his wife were attacked by a skinhead named Hondo. In a shocking turn of events, Alex, Emmett, and his unfortunate wife all lost their lives. Kai was taken aback when he learned that Rebecca had killed Alex for her own reasons. Meanwhile, Chaitan, the Indian gangster, made a triumphant return to Banshee after winning a brutal underground fight, just as news of Alex's death reached him. So the moral of the story is, if you ever want a fresh start, just steal a sheriff's identity, survive some mobsters, and maybe knock out a few gang members along the way, but definitely make sure to leave town before the fireworks start.